Well, hello. It's great to see you again. In this part, we will look at projection for everyone. My world exists for me, and I exist for my world. This is a complex unity, but my world has its existence based on my perceiving forming. This meaning that I have of the world in myself is my orientation. It's the whole of me. It's the whole unity of me. If something should, the word I want to use is assail. If something should penetrate that unity and disturb it, that will have some really interesting reactions in all human beings, because that is what we protect. The source of external projections and counter projections is no joke. So what do we have possessed that needs to be defended? One wonders. Pain. Who wants to experience pain and suffering? We have to protect ourselves against attack from someone else. But we don't hesitate to use those arrows in a formidable way to attack, to defend ourselves and attack someone else. We defend ourselves when we're going to lose something, for example. Well, what is there for me to lose? Face? Money? Status? My identity? Who am I? This that I protect, this idea of mine. Who is this? What is so precious about it? Attack and defense consists of references we draw from our memory immediately and swiftly. It's these arrows that we use to defend ourselves with and to attack others. It's the weapons we use in our normal everyday lives. Every arrow reference drawn from memory, the rear view mirror, is a weapon, psychological weapon, and that we fire to defend ourselves or to attack others. These type of psychological defenses are the things that we have in the armoury of our quiver we hold in them. The quiver is our references that contain our references in our memory, from which we select through interpretation, association, assimilation, and synthesis. Fast, swift, moving, swift moving. These mythological arrows contain the references that I use, that I shoot at those close to me or those far from me, and we use them formidably. Now, if you will stay with me, I'm going to use 3 examples in our recent run-up to the 2020 election. One just has to look at what goes on today in politics, for example, and economics. That's the other example we are going to use. And in our everyday Christian life is the other example I'm going to use. Let's begin. And we stress that this has nothing to do with policy, with politics, or any persona. Our investigation here is purely to understand the psychology of projection And I'm using these three examples as a teaching method, if you like, to illustrate how ordinary, how things are for us. It's a natural thing that we do. Accusation and counter-accusation. Projection and counter-projection. Prolific. It abundantly occurs in our world, yet we are oblivious of it. It's just a natural thing of doing. For example, if the United States Navy, for example, parks in the Strait of Hormuz, what are we doing? We're projecting our power through our presence and the weaponry that we have. Projection. In our first example, we are going to use a statement that was recently made in the House of Representatives in reference to the Trump administration, who wants to nominate and has nominated a candidate for the Supreme Court position. Quote, "We have arrows in our quiver yet to deploy." You can find this link underneath here. What is the counter projection to this? Quote, "The problem, short of sending additional articles of impeachment, the quiver seems to be empty." Counter projection. And this report is by Jonathan Nicholson in the link below. These arrows are fast flying, formidable. They are precisely aimed at their target, and their aim is to achieve the goal that's behind the references they use. Likewise, the counter projection asserts there's no arrows in the quiver, null, no effects. Perhaps the guy should have said, "Well, I have a cannon with dry powder and some things that backs me up. You don't want to touch that." Our second example is in an online paper called Market Watch. And Market Watch, link below, reports Mr. Trump as saying the following thing of the Fed and Mr. Powell in reference to a statement from the Fed that says, "The central bank has taken a number of steps to cushion the economic hardship of the COVID pandemic." Mr. Trump says, speaking at the White House, with reference to this, "The Fed isn't finished. It has more arrows in its quiver." Think about that. He uses the same image in a different context, the same mythological image of a container, in this case, a quiver. What does he mean with that? Well, the Fed holds in his coffers, container, coffers, a vast array of strategic solutions, shall we say, for various economic problems, for easing over the essence of the Keynesian economic system, for easing over, cutting off the very high and the very low points. These easing overs is the strategy that is part of this references that's going to be implemented in the strategy to contain the fallout from the coronavirus. Coffers, holders, containers, quivers. What is the job of the Fed? Moving the arrow of the financial markets upwards. Growth. This is a very apt image of projection, and it holds in its transference to the future the promise of fixing or growth. But here is the thing. Daniel Kahneman, the economist of Nobel Prize fame in his The Psychology of Economics, have already said that prediction in this field is no better than chance. What's going on? In this respect, link below, one of the 7 things that investors should keep in mind when they assess a company they want to buy. One of the 7 things is that Warren Buffett is saying is, forget about the rear view mirror in your assessment. Why? Because the past is a poor predictor of what's going to happen in the future. Kahneman's point, exactly, and mine. You have to bring your attention into the present time. Our immediate choices from the quiver, the container of memory and the reference we hold, is unreliable. The perceptions we form on the basis of that basically is an illusion that I form myself from drawing these references. Latest research. Lastly, there is a remark made by Mitt Romney. He says, get married and have a quiver full of kids if you can. What is going on here from a projective perspective? Well, that contraception should not be used is a central value that is held by evangelicals. Likewise, they hold that every life should be valued essentially. They're against abortion. Just between 1973 and 2017 or 2018, I think, linked below, 61 million abortions. The taxpayer is paying for that. I hold myself that every human life, all life, should be having an opportunity to become. What is going on here? In this case, in Romney's example, the quiver is a sacred image of a womb. Sacred womb. Well, what other examples do we have of this? What about Mother Earth as a womb? This is a very old mythological image. Generating the image of a quiver full of arrows is the very same image of arrows that are contained in our memory. And the quiver, use of the word of the image quiver, is to indicate that. Well, what are these valuable things? The arrows that we select through interpretation, association, synthesis, assimilation, our perception. Well, they hold the values that we want to protect, both as individuals, perhaps, and also as big organizations such as governments, Christ, the church, and so on. Here is the thing. Each reference we select is a formidable use to accomplish a certain goal that I have. It's either to protect my self-identity against threats, or is to show the other one that he is less than I am. I have more power. We use it readily in our everyday lives. But now you might ask, what about the ordinary things like guilt, for example, and anger? Things like vengeance. Oh, we're not vengeful. We never. I'm never angry at those people over there. When are we going to take responsibility for our auto projections, the automata of our projection, our perceiving forming? That's the question, because that takes consideration, forethought, deliberation, and discrimination, not to hurt others, not to hurt myself. The known is the past, is all the things we know of ourselves. But it is in the past. Using the rear view mirror is hanging on to it, referring back to it all the time, while we have said, the advancing of my own psychology is in this very moment. In our next video in this series, Projection for Everyone, we're going to have a closer look at guilt and its significance for projection.